Now you might have noticed when we created our tween that we had a blank blue bar all the way across, including the end. But as soon as we made a change to the position at the end of our span, this little diamond appeared. Now that diamond actually represents the change that we made in the position on the screen. And we're going to refer to that diamond as a property keyframe. It's a keyframe, so it sets something, but it's much different than the dot that we see at the beginning. The beginning dot is a normal keyframe that sets up the object that's being tweened. But the diamond represents some place where we're not changing the object, we're simply changing a property of the object. There's actually quite a few properties we can change, so let's take a little closer look at this. If you use the right-click menu, you can see what I mean. Now, if you don't have a right-click mouse, you can just hold down Control and click on a Macintosh. But I'm going to right-click on the photo montage keyframe now. In the right-click menu, you'll notice we have Insert Keyframe and Clear Keyframe. Now, let's do the same thing on a keyframe inside of a motion tween. I'll click away from this so we don't select anything. And I'm going to right-click on the first keyframe in my motion tween layer for the camera icon. Now, we still have Insert Keyframe and Clear Keyframe, but notice they're pull-down menus now, and we get a choice of which keyframe we actually want to clear or insert. We've got separate keyframes for position, scale, skew, rotation color, filter, and then one that'll handle all of them at once. Let me click away from that too. Now, let's try this out. What if we wanted to change the rotation? There's always a keyframe setting at the very beginning that sets up each one of those properties. But if there's no additional property keyframe in the rest of the span, then that property won't be tweened. Let's try this out. My playhead is already at the beginning of my camera icon span here. So let me just switch to my free transform tool. I'll select our camera icon, and I'll just rotate it a little bit. Now, we've just changed the rotation property for the first keyframe, but I don't have any more property keyframes that deal with rotation. So if we preview our animation, it just holds that rotation all the way through. Now, if I move my timeline to the end, and we make a change to the rotation again, I'll just turn it back to flat here. Now I have two rotation property changes, one at the beginning and one at the end. And you can see that our object changes from those 2 points as we move through the tween. Now, if you have your playhead set in the middle of a span, you can change any property you want, and it'll make a property keyframe for you. Let me take my rotation here, and I'll just rotate it up the other direction. We can see our new property keyframe has been added right here inside the span. And if I move my playhead around, we can see that it's now moving from the first rotation point at the beginning, now to the middle one, and finally rotating out to the end. Now, if I right-click on this new property keyframe, I can choose Clear, and I want to specifically clear the rotation keyframe. I don't want to clear any of the others because then I'll lose my path. Now, sometimes it's hard to tell what kind of keyframe you have, but usually you can look at what's happening on your screen to be able to tell. Now, it just so happens that for the rotation property, we have another way of setting it. So let me show you that. I'll scroll my timeline back to the beginning of the span, and I'm just going to straighten this back out using my normal free transform tool. So we should actually have a flat animation now. Now, the technique we were just looking at works great up to rotations of 180 degrees. After that, it'll start flipping around the other way, or it won't completely rotate at all for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a different property. Instead of using the properties on the object itself, let's go for a tween property. Now, I currently have my tween selected, and I can see the properties over in the motion tween panel. If you're not seeing the same thing, just click on the tween. That'll bring up your motion tween panel. And we're going to go down to the rotation settings. Using this, I can change the number of times my item is going to rotate and even add a few degrees on the end of it. I'll click over here at the number of times and I'll just type in 1. We'll hit enter. And now I'm going to get 1 clockwise rotation. We don't have to change anything else for this type of setting. It's good for the whole tween. So if we start back at the beginning where it's flat, we're going to see that we get a complete rotation of our camera as it moves through the span. Let's try one more example of working with property keyframes. I'd like to change the scale of my camera, but I'd actually like it to end at the scale it's at and start at a larger size. If I go back to the beginning and change that, I'll have to go back to the end and then reset a new keyframe property. If you know you need a keyframe and you don't have one, you can just create one with the right-click menu. Let me go back to my normal selection tool here. I'll right-click on the last keyframe of my span, and I'm going to insert a keyframe for the scale. What that will do is save the current scale setting and place that in a keyframe at the end. And now if I go back to the beginning, we'll just drag our playhead. I can change the scale, and I won't have to reset the scale at the end. Let me just go back to my free transform tool here. I'll make kind of a big camera, and I'm going to hold Shift down so that it'll be a uniform scale. And I'll even move the beginning position just to make sure it's off the screen. What we should see now is the camera will slowly reduce in size as it's spinning and reaching its final position. As you can see, there's a lot of detail going on. We've only got so much time in this series, so if you want to find out more about motion tweens, you can come back for our next Total Training series where we'll be talking about some of those details, including, if we go over to this Windows menu here, the new Motion Editor panel. Now, this actually gives you control over all of the different property keyframes that we've been talking about, and you can do it in graphical form. I'll just switch back to the timeline window for now.